If you turn to Luke 21, I want to show you another one. Luke 21, Jesus says this. In Luke 21, starting in verse 1, Jesus will reward us when He sees us loving to sacrifice for Him through our financial generosity. Remember, Jesus talked more about money than any other topic. It's a big, big item. He talks about money being the monitor of our heart. In Luke 21, He tells a story, Jesus does. He looked up and saw the rich putting their gifts in the treasury, and it's good that they did. And then He saw a certain poor widow, verse 2, putting in her 2 mites. And He said, truly I say unto you, this poor widow has put in more than all. I hear a lot of people lament. They say, I wish I could be wealthy. I'd give so much to the Lord. Did you know what? The Lord doesn't need you to be wealthy to give so much to Him. He needs you to give sacrificially from what you have. And the tragedy is I see a lot of people who are suffering, who are struggling with their finances, and what they do is they defer giving to the Lord. And they say, when I get out of debt, when I get all this, or when I get a better job, I'll give. Do you know what? This woman was impoverished, and what Christ could not forget is she gave, look what it says in verse 4. All of these out of their abundance have put an offering for God, but she out of her poverty put in all the livelihood that she had. The reward in heaven is proportionate to the cost to us. I have a friend who started a company in Louisiana and did very well with it. They call him, when I see him, the $250 million man. But you know what? When he gives $10,000, it's nothing to him. I mean, he makes that every day. But when someone writes a $5 check and they're on a $250 a month Social Security pension fund, and when they can barely make ends meet, the Lord sees that they have given out of their poverty. So don't refrain. Did you know there's nothing wrong with putting quarters in the offering? In fact, it doesn't matter what you put in. In fact, it's hard. I have to go to 2 services here. All of you think it's hard. You go to 1, I go to 2. Both morning services. And both times they pass the plate. And so I've had to start writing 2 checks instead of 1, because I don't want to miss the blessing of giving. And children should be encouraged. The old thing of getting a jar and there are 10 dimes. You break the dollar in 10 dimes and give 1 out of the 10 to the Lord. Not to be legalistic and to be tithers, but to get them in the habit of giving. I don't like all this automatic direct deposit stuff, and all this. Even to the missionaries, I still love to actually write the check and pray for them as I mail it, and to think that I'm actually investing in heaven and actually putting it into not the wonderful servant of the Lord blue-shirted ushers that we have here, but actually I'm putting it into the Lord's hands. And what Jesus said is, I reward those who sacrifice. In fact, in Matthew 6:19, Jesus said, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Be as anxious to accumulate treasures in heaven as we are to manage our finances on earth. Both are important. If you don't provide for your family, the Lord says a man is worse than an infidel. So you and I must provide and pay our bills and be responsible stewards. But we are supposed to have a great concern. Jesus said we should seek to lay up for ourselves. There's nothing wrong with wanting to have treasures in heaven. In fact, Jesus commends it. There's this whole movement in the church. They say, I'm going to be low-key. I don't want rewards. I just want the Lord to get all the credit. That often is an excuse. It's an excuse to an indolent lifestyle for the Lord instead of striving like Paul. Paul says, I buffet my body. I beat myself down. I'm constantly agonizing and going through life because I want to win the prize. That should be the heartbeat of all of us. And in these times, I want to remind you, we live in very uncertain times. In fact, with everything that's been going on, the 40.8% drop in the equity markets in 2008 so far, I started reading about the last Great Depression. And if you want to get really sick, you ought to read Willard Cantillon's book, The Day the Dollar Dies. It's a recounting of the European recession after World War II. And it's unbelievable what he says. He said in there, a German mother wanted to assist in the building of a Bible school on the outskirts of the destroyed city of Frankfurt. She held her money with pride and tenderness as though it was a part of her life. She earned the money with hard work. She was investing it in a worthy cause and beamed with pride. But Cantillon continues, how could I tell her that she had held this money too long? Remember what happened with the mark after the war? It became worthless. They had to redo their whole currency because of the hyperinflation that went on. Cantillon continues, how could I tell her she held the money too long? Why did it fall my lot to shock this sensitive soul with the news her money was virtually worthless? Why had she not read the morning paper or heard the announcement of the new government in Bonn, canceled the currency? On that Sunday in June of 1948, a staggering number of Germans committed suicide. Millions lost their savings because the mark had been canceled by the government. If only they had exchanged their money for something that would survive the economic collapse. If this dear lady, bless her, had brought her money sooner, those marks would have helped pay for the renovation of the facilities of the school. Too bad that she had to hear the disappointing words, Madame, I'm sorry. I cannot accept your money. Now that was one slice out of post-World War II Germany. But someday every dollar, every piece of gold, and every jewel will be devalued and wiped out forever. 2 Peter 3:10 says the day of the Lord will come and everything's going to burn up. So much for Wall Street. Goodbye to stocks and bonds and property and gold. Goodbye to houses, condos, and cars. The wise investors should put their money in a place that will bring the greatest dividends for the longest time. We cannot take dollars and Krugerrands and maple leafs with us unless we transmute them into something that will bridge the gap between earth and heaven. On a wall in a New York City rescue mission, there are these lines. Angels from their realms on high look down with us with wondering eye, that we are but such passing guests. We build such strong and solid nests. But when we hope to dwell for aye, we scarcely take heed one stone to buy. Think about where your treasures are in economic uncertain times. Jesus said, lay them up in heaven. Give them to me before they're worthless.